So one of the themes of this week is the so-called Trump trade. Given what's going on, apparently, we don't know, but what's going on apparently in the campaign, it seems like at least there's a substantial possibility that Donald Trump will be our next president. What is in the Trump trade? What are people reacting to in the market?
Well, first of all, there's a number of different things going on in the market at the moment. There are a lot of cross currents and so forth. But if we want to just focus on the Trump trade, his probability of success is now up to close to 70%. And that has made the market wake up and say, OK, so what are we looking at? And so it really spans a huge gamut of things, everything from gun manufacturers to for-profit education, which thinks they're going to benefit if he stops the student loan forgiveness, to the GSEs, Fannie and Freddie, because maybe he won't take the dividend sweep anymore, energy stocks, manufacturing companies that might benefit from the tariffs. And so investors are rushing around looking for all the different places they think they would benefit from another Trump presidency.
One of the things I think we've seen is in the bond curve, basically, for treasuries, because there's a sense that actually there's going to be higher rates out there in the long end of the curve, which changes a fair number of things. What is the possibility of a Trump presidency with his economic policies leading to more inflation, and therefore the Fed may be having to raise rates again?
Well, the bond trade's a little complicated because we did have that good in the sense of being a slightly soft jobs number, and the predicted number of Fed rate cuts is now up to something over 2, and therefore the 10-year started to come down. And now you have the Trump piece layering on that, pushing it up a little bit, but not hugely. But I don't think there's a lot of doubt that his fiscal policies, as expressed, would be inflationary and therefore biased toward higher interest rates.
So talk about that Tax Cut and Jobs Act specifically. We had Scott Besson on last week, and he said, oh, no, don't worry about it. We're going to save a lot of money. We're going to save $1 trillion a year from basically undoing the Inflation Reduction Act. We're going to save another $1 trillion by redoing Medicare. Now, I will note that when President Trump came in the first time, he said they were going to get rid of Obamacare. That would save a slew of money. But what are the prospects that actually they would cut back on some of the spending under the Biden administration?
Well, remember that we didn't get rid of Obamacare because John McCain, and because while he had technically had control of both houses of Congress, he lost a Republican that cost him that. So a lot of this is going to depend on what happens to Congress. If both houses of Congress go Republican, then he's obviously got much more scope to do a bunch of stuff. Whether he really would do it or not, who knows? The record of the first Trump presidency was not good from a fiscal point of view. The deficit went up by hundreds of billions of dollars before COVID ever arrived, in large part because the TCJA never came close to paying for itself. It was close to a $2 trillion cost with no offsets in spending and no real revenues associated with it.
So that's all on the revenue side, as it were. What about tariffs? The one thing President Trump has always seemed to enjoy has been imposing tariffs, particularly on China, but not only on China, frankly. He likes tariffs. That does, of course, increase the cost to consumers and therefore, I guess, inflation.
Sure. And by the way, his last set of tariffs, which were far less robust than what he's talking about now, raised something like $30 billion of revenue. I thought you were going to ask about revenue. Very little contribution to revenue. The evidence is overwhelming. Many economists have studied this, that essentially 100%, 95, 105%, something in that ballpark was paid for by consumers. None of it was paid for by China. Maybe a little of it came out of the companies in terms of profit margins, but essentially it was paid for by consumers and was therefore inflationary. Now, they were very limited tariffs. You start talking about 10% across the board on all imports, you're in a different ballgame.
When we talk about inflation, one of the things we naturally think about is the Federal Reserve. It's their job, actually, to have price stability, right? There's a lot of speculation, not necessarily coming from Donald Trump himself. It's from people around him, like Peter Navarro, who's talked about firing Jay Powell. But what are the prospects of really undermining, to some extent, the independence of the Fed?
That's, to me, incredibly scary. I think the independence of the Fed, they don't get everything right. They got inflation wrong. We'll stipulate to that. They got some stuff wrong in 2019. They may have gotten some stuff wrong coming out of the GFC, although they did a great job generally in the GFC. But let's just stipulate the independence of the Fed is critical and central to our economic success. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You would not want the Congress or the White House in charge of monetary policy. And so any step to undermine the Fed by any president of either party should be something that we all push back as strongly as possible.
So overall, why do we find so many investors who are backing President Trump? Given everything you just said, what do you see they don't, or what do they see you don't?
They have a variety of reasons, and I understand their reasons. For example, one of the biggest reasons you hear is the regulatory stuff. There's no question. And now, in fairness to the president, although he appointed these people, they are independent regulatory agencies. But nonetheless, a lot of what the FTC has been trying to do, a lot of what the SEC has been trying to do, even the FCC, the FDA, really has upset business. And they simply feel that this president is too progressive, and they feel that his vice president, should she become president, is even more progressive, and they don't like any of that. And there are other reasons, but that's a good example, maybe the main example of what they just don't think this is a pro-business administration. I would say, even though I do support the president, attacking businessmen with some regularity is really not the way to get their support. I don't think that's not what my mother taught me.